morning, my name's Teresa. I'm the owner of New Forest Sewing Studio and we do a monthly make, as you know from our other videos. So this month for October we're going to do the I Am NOUT pattern. So yeah, it's on the English side. So it's written in English and French, that's all. So yeah, this is the I Am NOUT sewing pattern. So they're like a sailor style trouser. So yeah, and we're going to make it in one of our lovely 8-ounce organic brushed cotton twill. So that's that one there. Okay, so I'll just angle the camera down and then we can get started. So I've put all my markings on. I've marked where my buttonholes are going to be on my front trouser piece. I've marked where my dart will go, and I've interfaced the pieces that need interfacing, which is I need to interface the front, number 4, the front facing piece, number 6, the waistband, and then number, which is the centre front waistband, that piece there, which is cut on the fold. Okay, so you're just going to interface one of those and one of your waistbands, but both pieces of your front facing, number 4. Okay, so I've done those, and I've also gone ahead and neatened the overlocked, or neaten whatever way you're going to neaten, the long edge of the front facing and also the long edge of the side front, which is piece number 3. Okay, but it does tell you to do that as you go along, but sometimes I prefer to do it before I start. So we want our front piece, which is piece 1, our front leg as they call it, and piece 4, which is our front facings. Okay, and then we're going to place those out like so. So what we want to do, get that in view a bit better. This way, right? Okay, let's do one at a time. So we want to piece our front facing piece to our front leg. Same on the other side. So we're just going to pin that in place down along that edge. A bit there, a bit there. And then just in the middle there. Okay, show you that one as well. So we're going to pin it at the top there. Here at the bottom. Okay, so we're going to stitch that at 1 centimetre seam allowance, all right, down both of those pieces. I'll pin those there, and yeah, then we're going to understitch it. So I'll show you that next. So I'll stitch those at 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then I'll show you how we'll press it and understitch it. Okay. Okay, so we've stitched those seams. Okay, so we've stitched that down there. Okay, centimetre seam allowance, and then we've just pressed it so that the seam allowance is facing towards the facing there. Seam allowance is going towards the facing, and then from this side we're just going to understitch down that just close along to that edge there. Okay, so we're going to do that on both sides, and then when we've done that we'll then fold that over, and then we're just going to stitch along, just 5mm seam allowance, just stitch along there and along that bottom piece there, just to hold those in place. Okay, so I'll do that next. Okay, so there, that's a bit understitched. You see that just along that edge, so it's just catching that seam allowance onto the facing. Okay, so then when it folds over there, it naturally folds over and you don't see any of the seam. Okay, and then when you've done that, you just need to stitch along that edge, the top edge there, just to hold this facing piece in place, and then again that bottom one there. Okay, so I need to do that on the other one, and then it just wants you to stitch your buttonholes. So through both layers that you've got here, it just wants you to stitch your buttonholes where they're marked. So I'll go and do that next. Okay, so that's the buttonholes sewed on. Okay, so what I did, just to help keep it stable to sew your buttonholes, because you don't want it rippling along here, I just made sure it was nice and flat and pinned it in place, sort of in between the buttonholes, just so that it didn't, you know, it doesn't start sort of rippling or anything. So you just keep them nice and straight. You definitely need to mark the line of your buttonhole you want to go, because they're not, as you can see from there, hopefully, they're not sort of at a right angle to the to here, so they follow along straight, because obviously that's at an angle, so then they are straight when that's angled. If that makes any sense? Hope so. Okay, so that's those. So I'm just going to take those pins out now. I'll give that a press in a minute. These are just my chalk marks, but they'll come out in the wash, so that's fine. Right, so let's put those to one side. So next it wants us to do our waistband pieces. So, okay, so we've stitched the waistband. I've turned that one out, graded the seam allowance around, clipped the corners, and then turned that out. So I'll show you how I did that on the other piece here. So I just trim down the, doesn't say to do this in the pattern, but it just helps it sit a bit nicer. So I just tend to trim down 1/2. Only got centimetre seam allowance, so it's not a great deal, but if you trim down 1/2, then it just helps it, you don't get so much of a ridge in the waistband where the seam is here. It's more graduated because you've graded it. So I'll just trim that on there as well, like that, and then I'll trim the corners. You see what I'm doing. That one there, and then that one there. So that's that. And then next I'll just take you over to the iron to tell you how, show you how I turn it out. So sometimes you can just turn it out, poke out the corners, and then get that to roll. But sometimes when you do that, you're always losing a bit of your seam allowance. You need that right open, really. So it's easier to press that open first. So I'll show you. I just use a tailor's hand to do that. The bit on the tailor's hand. So I'll show you how I do that on the iron. Okay, so just use a tailor's hand here, and you can use the pointed bit at the top here, and then if you put your seam there over a bit of press, just do the other corner first. Just press that open. And then just along the top. See that right here. You don't have to do this, it just helps when you're turning it out that you're you won't lose a bit of the seam when it's turned show you in a second. So press that open like that. Oops, there's a pin there. Just grab that. So then when you turn it out like that, your seams naturally nice and to the surface, as it were, there. So I'm just going to make sure those corners are right pointed out. Very good, that one. So these are just a point turner. You can do it with a chopstick, knitting needle, all sorts. And then just press it nice and flat. I want to make sure that you've got that set over to the wrong side. So I'm spending a few minutes just to get it nice and flat and how you want it. And I just need to tuck back in that edge that I turned under it. That's easy to do with my stitched line now. Okay, so then that's all pressed out. Just get that over there. I'll just put the clapper on that for a minute, just so that it can stay where I want it. Oh, I'm not sure. Just going to put that on there for a minute, just so that that can set nicely. Right, let's. Okay, so that's our waistband pieces done. Let's put them over to the side. And next we want our back pieces to do our darts. Is next. Oops, there's a pin in that. So I've got tailor's tacks here. I've marked the point of my dart, and then I've also marked, put a tailor's tack at the point of my darts here, and also at the two ends for the pocket placement, and also the two here that all meet up for the dart, just to make sure that all aligns up. Right. So that's the tailor's tacks I've got here. So I'm going to join those separate. So we want to join right sides together. We want to join the dart legs at the top, which I've just marked with a snip. So that's these two bits just at the top there, one there and one there. Put a snip into each of those. And so stuff at the bottom. So I'll line those two up first. Then I'm going to find the point of the dart, which is marked with my tailor's tack there. And I'm going to line up those two little tailor's tacks there. One there. Get rid of those rather than stitch those in. It'll be a nightmare to get out. There we go. Okay. So then we're just going to draw. I'm just going to put another pin on the top there, keep it flat. And then I'm just going to mark my dart line from there to there. So I'm going to use a chalk pen on this because it's dark fabric. So just from where you're snipping at the top there is for your dart leg, down to the point there. So if you just draw that in. So from the dart leg there at the top, down to the point there. Okay, so that's that one marked. So I'm going to stitch that. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the dart on the other leg. and then we'll do the pockets. Okay, so that's the darts stitched in place. So we've stitched those down there. So you want to back stitch at the big top of the dart here, and then just stitch down towards the point of the dart. Don't back stitch at the point of the dart, just sew off, leave some threads, and then tie your thread ends off. Okay, if you back stitch at the point of the dart, just might make them a bit pointy, although they are hidden inside the pockets on this one, but it's just good practice not to. So that's both my darts, and then it wants you to press your dart edge towards the back of the trouser, towards the back of the trouser there, back seam. Okay, so that's those done. Put those to one side. And then next bit is the pockets. So it says to neaten the outer edges of the pockets. You don't need to neaten the top edge, but I did as I was going round. And then it wants you to fold over the top edge, fold over a centimetre first, and then fold over another centimetre. And then we're going to just stitch along the top there. Okay, so I'm going to do that first, and then we fold over the other edges, and we'll fix them to we'll attach them to the trousers. So I'll go and do those top edges first. Okay, so that's the top edge stitched. I've decided to stitch it twice because I will stitch around the pockets edge twice. So quite good with this packet. With this pattern, it gives you a pocket template, which is piece number 8, which you can cut out and attach it to some card. And it's quite good because it's your template for turning the edges in your pocket. So you just line it up with the top there, centrally, and then fold over your edges here. And iron it. Like so, and then I'll do the other side. You can fold over that one at the bottom. It's quite nice because it makes sure you get your pockets nice and uniform, nice and even on each side. And sometimes it's worth just putting a ham over there for a moment, just to secure, just to let that cool down, and then it'll help set those seams where they want to be and stay in. And you can just take your piece out. Oops, just ever so you know it. There we go. Out there, and then you've got your pocket edges nicely turned out, and your corners are nice and sharp, so that's quite a good way of doing that. Okay, we'll put them on the trouser. So now we're going to position them onto the trouser. So these are my tailor's tacks that I've got marked in for the edges of my pocket placement. So that's this one and this one on the pattern. Okay. So I'm going to mark that there, line up that with that there. And then just get a neat pin that in place. Get the other one there. There we go, that one there. Okay, and then I would pin the one in the centre first next, so make sure that's all flat underneath where your dart is underneath, and then one in there, and then it's just worth just checking that you've got your, they should be, because you've got your tailor's tacks in there. 5 3/4. 5 3/4, and then from that point 6 1/4, 6 1/2, yeah. So those line up nicely. And I've just put a label in my, I just quite like to put a label sometimes in the seam of where I'm going to join the pocket. So I'm going to attach those, and then okay, and it wants us to do a little bar tack at the tops of the pockets here. So I'll put those in. So I'll stitch around those. I'm going to do 2 rows of top stitching. I think it only asks you to do 1, yeah, but because I've done 2 along the top here, I'm going to do 2 around, and then I'll do some little bar tacks at the top there, and then we're going to be assembling the fronts and backs together. Okay, so that's the pockets sewn on there. Okay, and that's the bar tacks just put in along there. So the bar tack, you might have a bar tack option on your machine. If you haven't, then to do a bar tack, you just want to use a zigzag stitch and have the stitch length about 0.5 and the width about 2. Okay, and that will just give you a tiny little compact zigzag stitch to do a bar tack. Okay, so next it wants us to stitch the backs together and then the fronts together. So just around the crotch seam. So we're going to put that on there, line that up with the top there. Just pin that in place. Let's put a couple of pins in on that curve bit there. Make sure that stays positioned. Okay, so that's the back seam. That's the back seam pinned. And then it wants us to do the same thing with the front crotch seam. So that's our 2 front pieces that we've put the buttonholes in. So then we're going to join those together along the crotch seam there. So we're going to stitch the seam, centimetre seam allowance, and then overlock the seam or neaten it, zigzag it, however you're going to neaten your seams. And then the front, it wants us to press it towards the right, and then the back, it wants us to press it towards the left. Okay, so we're going to do that next, and then hide the side pocket bit on here on the fronts. Okay, so we'll do that next. So I'm going to go and stitch these first, overlock them and press them. Okay, so that's the crotch seam sewed on the front, and then when it says press towards the right, it means press it towards the right of the garment as you are wearing it. Okay, so it's pressed towards the right as you are wearing it, and then the back also stitched there, and then it wants you to press it towards the left, and that again is the left as you're wearing it. So we put that backs out of the way for a minute. Okay, and then it wants you to attach your side front pieces, which are piece 3 here. Okay, so just going to put a pin in the middle there just to help hold that still. It's moved out. There we go. So you're just going to neaten your edge, which I did earlier. Okay, so upside down. Neaten the edge along there. So that's the long edge piece. Okay, and then that just sits behind there. So you have a notch at the top on your pattern piece, which is this one here. Okay, and a notch there, and that's where the edge of your that's where that should sit. Okay, we're not attaching this top piece yet, but I'm going to pin it there because it helps you line up everything and make sure it's nice and straight and fitting correctly. And then you've also got a notch on your side seam piece there, which is, where is it? This one here on my pattern piece. And that is going to go there. Lining the edges and then just line that up nicely. Make sure that bottom bit stays put. Like that. And then just to stop it flapping about and help it stay sitting nice and flat while I'm sewing it, so I'm going to put one in the middle just to help keep that in place. And then it just wants us to basically baste that in place. Okay, so we've just stitched that down on that side, okay, just at about 1/2 centimetre seam allowance, just so that it's within, my cup of coffee out the way, just so that it's within the seam allowance, just to hold that in place in order to do the side seams. But you don't stitch at the top yet, because the top doesn't stitch to the front like that, because you'll have the waistband joining it. So it literally is just this piece at the side seam. But if you pin it here, it just helps to keep it all aligned as you're sewing it. So next it wants us to join the side seams and then the inseams. So we want our front piece like so, and then we'll get our back piece, so right sides together, and just join it together all down the side seams. Bottom. Okay, so that's all pinned down the side seam. Okay, so we're gonna stitch that and overlock it, and we're going to do exactly the same thing down the other side, and I think it wants us to press the seams towards the back. Yeah, finish the seam and press it towards the back. Yeah, so we're just going to press it towards the back, and then we're going to sew the inseam, so I'll show you that bit next. Okay, so that's the let's put it in the right way, the wrong way rather. That's the side seams. That's the side seams sewn up and then overlocked and then pressed towards the back. So I've done that on both sides, and then I've also decided to do, which the pattern doesn't say to do, but I just do it on jeans a lot. So just wanted to reinforce this seam here. So I've just top stitched down that seam and then just done a bar tack where this edge is here, because that's the point where it's going to get most stress and wear and things. So I've just bar tacked there, stitched down there, and then bar tacked there, which often you do on the sides of jeans. So that's that there. So next it wants us to do the inside seam. I'll put it back the wrong way. So right sides together. join the centre of the crotch seam. Now where it's we've got you to turn one to the right side and one to the left side, then that means that your seams nest, as it were. So you've got one side going that way and one side going that way. So you have sort of less bulk in one place. So that's a good idea. So then we're just going to join it at the side seams. Oh, and also I've overlocked my hem at the edge there at the end, because I probably just want to turn it up the once and stitch rather than turn it over twice. Just I prefer to do that with hems. I think it just hangs nicely. So that's that one there. Off those overlocked ends. So join it at the crotch seam, join it at the end, and then there's no notches to mark up on this pattern, but random. That's in the way. Oh, that's it. Let's get that out of the way. Right. So then just pin in the middle. There. And the same thing on the other side. So as I say, it's a centimetre seam allowance again for the inseam, and then we're going to overlock it and press it toward the back here. So let's follow the crotch one round. Between there. Okay, so I'm going to stitch that all around the so that's where we pinned it, all around the inseam, so the inside leg seam, right around the top. So I'm going to stitch up all the way around, back down to the end. Okay, and I'm going to overlock that and press it towards the back of the trousers, and then next it will be doing the, yeah, and then it's attaching the waistband. Okay, so I'll stitch that first. So that's the inseam sewn. I've left it in the wrong way, shouldn't I? There we go. So that's all stitched, overlocked, and then pressed towards the back. Okay, so I'll turn that in the right way, and now we just want to attach the waistbands. So the longer waistband goes around the back. I'm going to take these pins out now, holding this together. And then this waistband is going to attach to the right side of the jacket and fold around like that. Okay, so I'm going to just turn that over here so I can get that on. And you've got some notches there which line up, notch in your waistband edge that lines up with your side seam. And another notch there that lines up with that side seam. Oops. Just get the centre in place. Pinned, and again just make sure your dart legs are face towards the back. You press them that way, but it's just sometimes when you put your waistband on they can easily get flipped around the wrong way, so it's worth just pinning those all lined up properly. So it says to sew the back waistband, turn it all in and then attach it and then do the front waistband. I'm going to do them both at the same time. So that's that pinned along the back. And I'm going to turn it around and pin it to these front pocket, side pockets, side facings. I don't know what they call them now. They give some pattern pieces some funny names, don't they? Some side front. So you're going to pin that towards the side front. I want to get this lined up correctly on there. That side. Okay, so that's that side done. Do the same for this side. So you want to make sure you're getting at your centimetre seam allowance. You're just getting the edge of that seam bit there, your pocket side front, that's what they call it. There. Okay, so that's that one pinned in place all around the back there, like so. Okay, and then we're going to do the front piece. So let's just get the centre front. Should mark that earlier, really. Oh, I did mark it because it is there. It's just the interfacing bit over the top. Okay. So you've got your centre of your waistband bit will join the centre seam. And make sure your seam allowance is facing the right way. So sometimes it's a good idea to pin that, keep that still. Make sure that lines up with that corner. That one, and then the other side, and you're just making sure. I'm going to trim that off because it'll be difficult to see visually. So you want to make sure that your centimetre seam allowance, you're lining up with, I'll show you in a minute, let me just pin that. A few layers there to get through. So you want to make sure that you are getting this piece, so it's not the end here that you're lining up with the edge. You want to be thinking where you're stitching, so you need to get your 1 centimetre seam allowance lined up with your edge of your front piece there. Okay, and I'll pin those other bits in place. So then we're going to stitch all those on at 1 centimetre seam allowance. Then we're going to press the seam up towards the waistband, and then the other bit will fold down over the top. So I'll show you that bit. So I'll go and stitch those first, and then that will fold. This bit will then, the seam will press up, and that bit will fold over the top. Okay, so I'm going to stitch those first, and then we'll fold it, press it, and I prefer to tack it in place first to make sure, because you're going to stitch it from the right side, and I want to make sure I catch that bit underneath. So I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so that's the waistband sewn on, okay, on both the front and also on the back and the side front pieces. So then it wants you to press the seam allowance up towards, the waistband, okay, and then this edge we sort of folded and pressed before will then fold down over the top of there. So then we'll pin that in place like so, and then again there. Now it says to just pin and then sew it, but I do prefer to tack mine in place. I'll show you how I do that. I just prefer to make sure I've got the all the edges in as they should be. I have to trim some of this, otherwise it's far too bulky on the corner. So I'll trim that bit. Trim that bit. Tuck up inside. It's got pulled out. Push that up there. Bit off that edge there, but there'll be fibres underneath. Sort that end out in a minute. Right, let's do this end. This is lined up. Okay, like so. And the front waistband is just the same, so that folds over the front like that. Okay, just in the same way as the back. So then to tack it in place, I think I've shown this on other videos before as well, but you just literally tack, in case you haven't watched any of the others, you tack that in. So I'm going to ditch the seam that side and just catch the edge. Whoops. And there. Such a lovely day. It's a bit windy out today, but it's such a lovely day. I need to go and take my little dog for a walk in a minute. So when you're tacking it, you're just trying to get in the ditch of the seam this side, and then just catch the edge of that waistband that side. can sometimes feel the ditch of the seam the other side, which can help. You can take the pins out. So you see on that side, it's just literally in the ditch of the seam, as it were. And then this side, I just want to catch the edge there. So sometimes they want you to stitch in the ditch, but this one wants us to top stitch around the edge. So it wants us to top stitch along this edge, along here. Then whilst catching the seam on the underside. It takes a few minutes to do, tack it in place, but it's much worse unpicking and trying to put it right when you've missed it. Doing it the other way. So I just my preferred method to do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to tack the rest of that around there, and the same on the front one, and then it just wants us to stitch along that edge. Yeah, only along that edge, not right the way around. Yeah, just along that edge. So I'll do that. Okay, so I've stitched around the, it did say just to go along the top, just along the bottom edge of the waistband there to secure that on, but I decided to stitch all the way around just because I prefer that. So I did that with both the back waistbands and the side fronts and the front waistband there, and I've done my other two buttonholes along the top, and then the only other thing to do was to do the hem. So it said to turn up 1 centimetre and then turn it over again another centimetre and do a centimetre hem. I prefer, rather than it being thicker like that around the hem, I think it hangs better with less sort of folds. So I tend to overlock around the edge, and then I just turned it up the 2 centimetres and stitched around, top stitched around there. Then I've opened up the buttonholes, and then it's to sew the buttons on. Now it doesn't say anything about interfacing where your buttons are going to be, but they are going to, you know, it is better to interface where they are, because you want to give some support to the buttons, because they are going to take some strain on the fabric. So I decided to just interface them where the I just put little pins where my tailor's tacks were, like that, and then I've just ironed on some interfacing on the reverse there. And then just to sew the buttons on, you just want to make sure you leave a bit of a shank on the button so that you've got room for your facing bit to attach. So I'll just show you how I do that. So to show you on one, there's some buttons, there they are. So so this is a 4-hole buttonhole. I do tend to do my buttons by hand rather than on the machine. I just prefer it. I think it takes so much fiddling about to do it on the machine. I prefer to just sew them by hand. Let's just get this fixed where I want it first. So if you've marked where your buttons go, they do line up quite well, but you can always check that by placing over your buttonholes. And you want your button, it does explain it well in the instructions, but you want your button not to sit in the middle, but to sit to the edge, to the end here. Okay, because obviously that's the way it'll pull. So let's just secure that a little bit more. So just don't do it too tightly, don't pull it too tight. And then what we want to do, so you can do it with an end like this on your end like that, and then that just slide, she says, slide under there, not too tight, no, that's it, wiggle it loose, that's fine. And then you can stitch it on like that. Alternatively, you can put a I'm trying to get it through the, I'll do that in a minute. You can alternatively put like a pin across the front there and then stitch over that, just so that your stitches aren't too, so that you're not pulling it too tight to your fabric. Okay, so I'll just get there's a few more stitches in this one, and then I'll show you just how we do the shank on it. You want enough room to do your put your buttonhole on. Without it sort of puckering up the fabric if it's too tight. Funny, isn't it? Whenever when you do something on camera, it's always more difficult than if you just sit and sew it normally. One more across each way. Okay, so then you take it out, or you pin off, whichever method you've used, and then just bring your thread up, your needle up through there, and then just wrap round. Just do it about 4 or 5 times, and then back through to underneath. There we go. Okay, so that's your button sewn on, and it's just got a little bit of gap there where you've made the shank for it, so that when you put your button up, it's got room for your fabric to sit nicely without it being too tight and puckering up the fabric. Okay, so I'm going to stitch those other buttons on, and then I've got some photographs with it on. Okay. Okay, so these are the I Am NOUT trouser pants. They've got the button closure, which you just get buttons, both sort of closure, open and close, down both sides. So 4 buttons down both sides, giving the sailor trouser effect. Yeah, nice silhouette, nice and comfy. Yeah, so I think I will get a lot of wear out of those. Yeah, very nice. Like those, made up in our 8-ounce organic cotton twill in the colourway Nordic. So yeah, very comfortable.